We're always telling your stories, and it's time someone tells ours. We're humans first, journalists second. We chose this career to give you a voice. Now we're voicing ours. It's true, journalism has much room for improvement, but not all hope is lost, and we want your trust back by humanizing one journalist at a time. We're sharing with you what we go through to bring you the news. The pain, the tears, the trauma, and the mental health struggles. It's painful, and sometimes we even work 2 jobs to make ends meet. But we all have something in common: the passion, the joy, and the love we feel for storytelling and holding the powerful accountable. That includes holding ourselves accountable. So here are stories from us. This is how we want to help improve the news industry. The Awakened Journalist is proud to present Media Healers by Emiliana Molina Fajardo. Hi everyone, welcome back to The Awakened Journalist and our special project Media Healers. Today we have the privilege of speaking with Alejandro Rincón Agudelo. He has been following the diplomatic conversations and emergency meetings at the Security Council in the United Nations with the war in Ukraine. He is an international news correspondent for the national news organization in Colombia, Noticias RCN, and he also works for the sister station NTN 24, where his work airs across national television news stations in more than 20 different countries around the world. His reporting focuses mainly on Latin American issues and coverage of events in the United Nations, such as the political crisis in Venezuela, peace talks in Colombia, natural disasters in Chile, and the presidential elections throughout the region. Alejandro, welcome, and thank you for being here with us today.
Emiliana, what a great pleasure to be joining this special and very valuable project, and a very important conversation for all of us in the middle of this crazy dimension in the world that we're living, honestly.
I agree. So with that said, this crazy dimension in this crazy world that we're living in right now, I usually start these interviews asking journalists why they decided to become a journalist, but I think it's only fair that with you we start with how are you doing covering all the diplomatic meetings at the United Nations with the war in Ukraine?
And let it be that part of my official answer on the record. Really, it's been emotionally draining by many for a variety of reasons, I would say. However, in this context and in this crisis that we're living, yes, you're concentrating on reporting the facts, reporting the events, following things in a way that you show reality, what's happening. But then in the end, and after all, and especially in the context of the war in Ukraine, I do have to admit that being a human being, you are touched, you're moved, because there's very impactful images and circumstances that make you connect to realities in a different way. A very quick example, just days ago, when we were receiving the actually images of that theater in Mariupol, where around, it was said at some point, it was sheltering 400 people, mostly women, little kids, children, where actually they wrote in Cyrillic, children, noting who was hiding there and hoping that they were not being hit by missiles, and yet they did. That moves you, that moved me. Another image, for example, and I mean, of course, I'm going to be talking a lot about like images, because that's what I do for a living. I work with images, I report based on images. That's what I do. So images, not only the power of the video, but the power of connecting to emotions in a different way. It hits you differently. There's a very powerful image of a kid as he's walking through the border with Poland. He's walking alone. with his own like possession that was like a small bag of whatever he had with him, but he was alone. He was crying. And then you start to think about just that kid. You connect with that circumstance because you think about family, you think about friends, you think about those who have kids, and then you start wondering, what if it were your kids? What if it were your family? And that moves you, that moved me. So this context is it's been emotionally draining. It's been quite a whirlwind, I gotta admit. However, it's our world in 2021, 2022, sorry.
Yeah. And just so people know, between February 24th and March 15th, I think the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights in the United Nations recorded around 1,900 civilian casualties, with 726 people killed, including around 52 children. And this was caused by explosions and explosive weapons throughout populated areas. And what I want people to understand from your reality and your perspective is, the fact that you're inside of the United Nations covering these emergency meetings and these diplomatic conversations, and witnessing the Ukrainian war secondhand. So, and what I mean by secondhand is you are seeing all the images come through to you, and then you gather the facts and you report on it. You're not exactly in Ukraine right now, but this secondhand reporting also comes with, unfortunately, secondhand trauma. So the fact that
Yes.
you're not in the war in Ukraine, covering it on the ground, it doesn't mean that you don't experience trauma by receiving these very difficult images to watch. And I want to ask you how you are doing to cope with this situation.
Overall, day after day, when you just turn your camera off and then you're done with work, to me, throughout this, it's incredible also to think that we're on day 26 of this crisis. So we're just like fastly approaching to a month of a war, of aggression. Um, to me, most importantly, not being alone is what really, really, really helps me a lot. The fact that I try to find always after work some sort of activity, going to dinner, uh, go do anything with someone, not being alone, being able to have another human being, in this case in particular, just to do something and try to distract your mind. That's super, super, like really, really, really important for me right now. I think if I were like every day, if I were going home alone, uh, maybe my mind would be just like going again, thinking and rethinking and reliving things. And that would probably play like a bigger role into like the overall feeling that you have around the world. Because as a reporter, being a reporter and following this kind of circumstance, um, is where you're gonna go and do every day after. And then you just go day again, day again, day again. And what you do, it ends up affecting the way you feel about the world, the way you overall see things around you. And I am not the kind of person who wants or likes uh, to feel bad about the world. I mean, it's I'm not the kind of person who tends to take things like with him and keep him me hard and like uh, feel everything so intensely. But in this case in particular, when you think how much all of this could still really have an impact in like everybody, then it's that kind of concern that's in the back of your head. And I try not to keep it. I just try and like really, really uh, make an effort not to be so much affected by it. So sharing spaces with others, doing things after work, it's really, really important in this context, really, like sharing spaces with other human beings, other, I don't know, visions of the world, because right now everything looks so uncertain, really. And I just don't want, and it is, of course, a personal decision not to allow myself to be so depressed by it in a way. So I'm trying.
And that's the key word, trying, trying.
Yeah.
Because I agree with you that having a support system around you in very difficult times and very difficult news coverage
Yeah.
is key and is essential to maintain a healthy mental health and to be able to speak freely about these pressing issues that affect us, even by just telling the stories, is
Mhm.
crucial to not allow ourselves to fall into depressions. Which I'm wondering if I'm no how would you say it? I'm no stranger to depressions. I lived them throughout my career
Mhm.
and throughout my life. I'm wondering if you
Mhm.
have dealt with depressions throughout your career and throughout your life.
Yes, absolutely. It's part of what comes with the human being membership, right? I mean, I personally believe that there is circumstances and events overall. It's life events. That's the way that I see this issue in particular. It's their events that really upend everything you feel is certain, and it changes. And like the passions that I have lived throughout my life, and even in like my journalistic career, there's been uh not once, not twice, there's been quite a few actually.
Mhm.
I And even though I do not see myself as a currently not such a depressed person, I believe, but I have lived circumstances that upend everything that I thought was true, was real, and probably part of the reasons why I believe dealing with the depressions or like tough events, let's call it like that, is because there is a context, there's a reality that is created around some a set of conditions that you thought were real, and then everything changes for a reason. So it's that change, even through language. Sometimes, sorry, changes circumstances a lot that transform everything, and that very abrupt and very sudden change of circumstances, changes of, let's say, events overall, um that can really hurt you and really, really make you go through a bad time. But um in my case, the way that I've learned to deal with them, it's a very, I love the phrase because it's so simple and powerful, but sometimes it's not easy to apply. And that is, for every problem that you have and every circumstance that you face, yes, you can be your own problem, but you're also your own solution. Meaning, it is only you who, in the end, knows for sure what you need uh, to heal and to be better and to move on and to thrive. So, if you're not at peace with yourself first, you gotta work on that, because you're gonna have a bad time. That's where everything, everything and everywhere,
Yes,
that's where it all begins.
yes, I completely agree. Being at peace with yourself, and who
Yeah.
you are, then everything will flow much easier in life.
Yeah.
Alejo, can you go into detail, if you are willing and and if you feel comfortable,
Sure.
in one particular situation or one particular depression that you faced throughout your career in the news industry, and how you did to get yourself out of that situation,
Mm.
or what
In the
tools you
news
used.
industry. In the news industry. Oh my God. Yes. Well, I can think it's a let's say more than 10 years ago.
Okay.
Actually before assuming the role that I have nowadays in New York City,
Okay.
there was another moment when I was ready to get that role.
Mhm.
And then internally in the company that you're working for, you know where all of the connections are for you to be able to make it happen. And then you take the risk after, of course, many years of like hard working and showing your talent and making sure that everybody around who's supposed to like have the power of decisions back then, that they know you, they know your talent, they know what you're able to do. And I felt ready to assume that same position that I'm having now. And I tried, and I talked to people, and I pushed forward, and I tried to break that um, glass ceiling, as they say. And I tried, and I knocked really hard, and I was just like there with my hammer, trying to break it, trying to break it, trying to break it, and it didn't work. All because internal office politics, which in our media organizations, and like as every other like working organization, they play a lot into everybody else's life and careers and decisions and everything. So because of internal politics and like it was just not time for me. So that makes you think about uh, how in many circumstances, regardless of being sure and knowing your talent, your capabilities, what you're able to do to deliver, um, but not, maybe they don't see you the way you think you're seen. So that's interesting because in our media industries, if you're not, and of course that of course it was depressing. It was a heavy hit because seriously, honestly, I was so sure, right? That I knew that I had everything, but they don't see you the way you see yourself. So that is, and like as I was saying earlier, that's the kind of event and circumstance that you're certain about this reality that you create around yourself, that you hold so true and so sure in your heart. But then there's others that tell you that's not. And in my case, what I was told, I was, well, in my case, I was first not seen, or maybe they didn't take me seriously, which was much more hurtful in my case.
Yeah.
It didn't take me seriously.
Mhm.
Because they just don't see you the way you see yourself. So when you're pretty much like not taken like as the person who you believe you are, then that hurts. And my way to deal with that was just like, you do you keep doing yourself and getting better day by day. Just keep going, pushing forward and moving forward. And again, uh, that's when my motto, let's say, of like, yes, you could be your problem, but you're your own solution. I just kept working and going on. And then life later on had a beautiful surprise. And here I am.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, everything always works out in your favor, and
Yeah.
those difficult situations become your gift and your lessons, and you
Mhm.
get to choose whether you want to stay feeling sorry for yourself, or whether you want to take it as your gift and find ways, or choose ways to improve on yourself and work on yourself so that you could get that position or whatever you truly desire. I'm wondering if in this case for you, if it was a situation whether, they went with a different correspondent, but do you feel like it was, racial discrimination or along any of those lines?
No, in my case in particular, I was lucky. I mean, compared to others who have had that happen to them.
Yeah,
In my case, race didn't play a
play a
role or
role
anything.
at
It was
all.
just
Okay.
internal politics in terms of um, they were trying to give a job to someone who was out of a job,
Okay.
and he was closer friends with the person who in the end had the
The-
power of decision. So they went with that person, but it was a total internal politics in the office kind of situation. That was all. I'm 100% sure about that. Like
Okay.
somebody, they were trying to give a job to someone who didn't have it then, and because that person was already in the States and everything, they just went with that person, and then it
Okay.
didn't work out.
Okay.
And then I came.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
now you're here at NTN 24.
yeah,
Okay. Yeah, and I mean, unfortunately, like in I think in a lot of companies, sometimes who plays a big role in landing a
absolutely.
job, and it has nothing to do with
Yeah,
your talent or lack thereof talent. So
connections, connections,
connections,
connections, connections, connections,
networking.
connections, and yeah, absolutely. It's all
Okay.
about them.
Yeah. Yeah. Alejandro, so you're obviously, I think, well, you've covered multiple important events across your career. This might be one of the most important, as well as the crisis in Venezuela. At least
Mhm.
for Latin America and the Americas, the crisis in Venezuela was a huge part of your reporting career. I'm wondering what you think has been the most challenging part of being in the news industry so far.
Wow. Ay, ay, ay. Well, I believe that there's of course many challenges in this industry,
Yes.
even the future itself of the industry, with a growing media landscape that's turning more digital, like in a media landscape that's evolving so much,
Hmm.
in which everything that is digital, and just to mention a quick idea that just came to my mind, probably one of the biggest challenges overall as a reporter is like, how do you keep being on an industry and working on it when you are certain that you're living in what they call the post-truth world? So what's true now, because of like fake news and all of it. um Being a reporter overall in the former US administration, quite a challenge. Being faced in the street many times as people are yelling, and even nowadays, not so much as it was or as it got at one point. And being a Latino reporter in the United States also. Fake news, they yell at your face without even knowing you. So the power of words, it's very, very important to take into account in this industry. Uh, Challenge of being a reporter in this super hyper polarized world that we're living. That's been quite a challenge. Another big challenge has been um, trying not. How can I describe this? It's not a complex issue, but it's like, how do you move forward in a world overall? This is much. I'm going like on a bigger level.
Hmm.
When you feel that everything is crumbling around you, in terms of like, what is this? Where are we all going as a world? What's going on? So how do you move forward? How do you hold yourself together? That has been a challenge, especially because of all of the crises that I've been covering. Because just to sum up, like what we're dealing with right now, we're not out of the pandemic. Now there's a war that has all the potential to keep worsening because it's not getting any better. Uh, dealing with an economy that's like probably heading towards a rough time, and then you're there, and then you're trying to figure out yourself, like, what kind of world am I living? Because the world that our parents lived, at least, or people that are older than us, in a way, they lived a little bit of a different world that had, I believe, that was maybe a bit more hopeful. But right now, it's very, very tough. So those are the main, my main challenges are like the context challenges. My main challenges are those, or the context around, because again, the main reason what I do is because I want to find answers. I want to help people connect the dots. I want to help them understand. And if I, for one, sometimes I'm like struggling to make sense of reality, then it's very difficult sometimes to try to do that. But after all, day after day, it is again my connections, the people that I have around. So that's, for example, why I try to have people around me who I know that are going to bring me, in some aspects, a level of happiness, a level of joy, because it will be really, especially now, it will be really tough to have, like, you know, a difficult circumstance at home or whatever, and like not having like a healthy emotional life after work. That would be devastating right now. So I try to at least have something that pulls me together in a way that allows me not feel so bad about the world right now, because it's very, 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 very tough right
Yeah,
now.
and I think, go ahead. I
No,
think
no.
it's important.
Yeah.
I think it's important to mention, that sometimes, I know it was in my case, I felt guilty for taking time off when there was breaking news or for
Oh,
going on vacation. And as I was hopping on a flight, for example, I would get a text from my news director like, "Hey, by the way, there was a shooting next to the White House." And I'm sitting on the flight about to leave for vacation, and they're like, "Well, can you cover?" I'm like, "No, I already asked for the time off and I'm on the flight. I can't get off the flight, you
it's
know?"
like, yeah,
Yeah, like, oh, what do you want me to
it's
do?
like, I'm going. Bye bye.
But then
Wow.
you left feeling guilty because you were leaving, so I want to make sure that all journalists know that it's okay to feel a little bit of guilt, but then ask yourself why you're feeling guilty, and allow yourself to release that guilt or shame from taking time off from the news, because it
Oof.
is okay to unwind and we all need it. And if you are not mentally, emotionally, or physically okay and stable, and if you don't take that time for yourself,
Yeah.
how do you expect to deliver the news in a way that is valuable for you and for the audience? So,
Mhm.
start shifting that mentality from guilt to, it is so valuable that I take time for myself to be okay
Hmm.
with myself so that I can deliver information and content in a way that is valuable, and that I'm okay with. Going back to what you mentioned about feeling at peace with yourself.
I try a lot, and again, I mean, nobody said it was going to be easy, because it's not, especially in the context that we're living. But I do have to admit that nowadays, even more than other periods, but like unplugging these days has been really, really difficult to unplug, like to not be aware about the things, because it's an evolving crisis, it's a worsening crisis, and it's changing by the minute. And if there's any significant event that you're supposed to be following, then you're there. uh I do have to say though that I like right now try to unplug a little bit, even if it's just for a couple of hours. It really helps, because the times that we're living, the context that we're living, it's not good in terms of it's world moving events that are so strong and so powerful. And definitely, if there is a, let's hope there is like a not a quick or fast, but like let's hope that there's a solution in the road, to this war in Eastern Europe. These are events that pretty much they're going to be once in our lifetimes, and we're just navigating through this completely uncharted territory, and not connecting to that world right now it's definitely another challenges. We're talking about challenges. Oh my god, that one. Try to unplug for a bit and try to do other things and not having that on the back of your head. Wow, it's tough. But then again, you gotta try, because in the end, not everything is about, after all, you still are yourself, you have your life, your things, and then overall, what a difficult time, really. Oh my god, yes.
And I think that, I agree, it's been difficult times. And but something that has helped me a lot is one of my good friends, Christine, sent me an article the other day about the opponent. And
Mhm.
the opponent in this case would be Vladimir Putin. And what is the opponent
Yeah.
calling humanity to do? So in the midst of difficult and tough situations, let's find
Wow.
even just a little bit of light or something good. So what is the opponent calling humanity to do? To come together in unity to help Ukraine, to help refugees. And so, when we think of the opponent, as hard as it may be, as somebody who is actually shedding light on how much good there is in
Mhm.
humanity, because I think social media, if something good has been happening recently with social media, is the fact that this war, it has been seen around the world. I mean, Putin can't leave Russia right now. He has nowhere to hide, nowhere to go. So the
Yeah.
opponent is in a way calling humanity to come together, unify, and help create community to support each other. And then, that along with, I had a conversation the other day with my cousin as well, and her name is also actually Christina. And she was telling me, like, yeah, in very difficult times, when you find even just one small thing that you can be thankful for, one small thing that you see good in
Mm.
someone, that could help you
Yeah.
change your whole perspective. And what is the good in Putin right now? He's the opponent, and he's calling us to come together for one
Yeah.
cause, and to do something better for the world.
That definitely has been there's reason for hope. That's
Mhm.
that's the way that I see it, and I absolutely agree with that. In terms of there's definitely a unified international community that's rallying towards peace, and I can even say
Mhm.
that there was recently there was the last it was a big meeting at the United Nations General Assembly that was called under the item of Unified for Peace. And it was 141 countries signing together a declaration. And when you're saying countries, it means they're diplomatic representatives at the United Nations, meaning it's the representatives of their government. So you really feel that it's the peoples of the world really uniting for peace. That was the concept of rebuking uh, violence in the most like possible worst way, and things that you were by the way, now that we're speaking about it,
Yeah.
one of the most impactful things that I have like that I've struggled with, I gotta tell you, really
Yeah.
struggled like to understand overall,
Mhm.
things that I really thought that humanity and the world was already over, things about taking land by the force, forcing people just to that kind of situation that I thought that humanity was really over, turns we're not. And the fact that you feel, or I've been feeling, that the clock is turned backwards decades, and now we're leaving the situation that you thought the all that kind of situation that you thought was only that belonged primarily to texts and to history books, and yet here we are leaving the same thing. that's been beyond like mind-blowing in my case. Like really trying to understand. It's beyond like we're living in a war because this dude wants to take another country and he's using the force, and now he's threatening to have all the world into another example, by the way, connected to this, of the power of words. And this is even for you and everybody who's watching to keep in mind. The fact that you have the chief of the United Nations, the Secretary General Antonio Guterres, saying something as strong, it's strong, like this is parental warning, these are strong words, but they're true. The fact that he's saying that the prospect of a nuclear conflict stop being part of something unthinkable to be again part of the realm of possibility in 2022. Think about that just for a second. Like,
scary.
Nuclear conflict,
Really
it's
scary.
beyond. Because in the end, when a top diplomat like Antonio Guterres is saying that, it means, among other things, it's positioning, meaning red lines have been drawn already. And there's things happening in the background that the public cannot really know about because they're strong. But when this guy, as the top diplomat of the world,
says that publicly,
states that publicly, then you gotta start thinking, because that means the state and the condition of the world, our world, the one you and I share, it's everything but certain. And those are the things and sources of concern that, after all, I fix and I reconcile by taking a look in social media, for example, like how everybody is like hashtag standing with Ukraine. That means that nobody wants to live in that chaos, that we really want to live our own world and try to be happy with what we have, because today we have it, but tomorrow we don't.
and to, I mean, that's so important. And to go back to several points that you touched on, one, the power of language and the power of words. The fact that Antonio Guterres said that publicly just gives you a brief picture of what is going on behind the scenes in those diplomatic channels. And I can guarantee you those meetings are beyond intense. But two, something very magical and amazing that you just mentioned is those 142 countries, I think you said, voted in
141,
favor. 141 countries voted in favor in the United Nations. And just to put it in perspective for people, there's 195 countries in the world. I believe it's 193 countries that are member states of the United Nations. And for 141 to vote in favor of the same thing, I mean, Alejandro, can you talk to us about how difficult that is? I mean,
it is
it's not often, and you get
difficult.
so many countries voting.
Not only that, it's the fact that rallying the entire world in that way, it's intense. It's a diplomatic, insane kind of job. But most importantly, in this case, it can happen, which means, after all, we as a humanity and like as the people of the world, there's real common interests for everybody. But overall, 141 countries voting on the side of one thing, it's a very, it's a beyond powerful declaration. It really is a statement. It really is a call to action. It really is a message, a direct message to those who really don't care, apparently, or those whose ambitions and whose wicked ideas of the world are leading us towards undesired situation. But in this case, 141, it's a beyond strong message of how do we really want to live, which is, after all, in peace with our
exactly. Yeah, and I think that, Putin, without it being his initial intention, is
Yeah,
creating just that unity across the world for one common
of
goal,
course.
which is peace. Alejandro, and before we part ways, because I know you have to go to the new
Yeah, it's been,
to
I was
start
just like,
airing the
okay, what time
newscast.
is it?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Last question. What is one thing that you would want the news industry to improve, or that you think needs to improve as soon as possible in the news industry?
Overall, I do believe the industry needs to understand a bit better their talents, but their talents, and what I mean is, we as talented people, as you are as a talented people, um, we need to be better understood as overall human beings, not just part of a machine or an industry. And what I believe many times what happens is you're just supposed to deliver and do this and do that. It turns out you are a human being. You're a complex entity that is not only made by your work, your family also plays a role, your personal relationships, everything. You are a whole human being. In your job, even in the way you're compensated, your pay, or the circumstances of your work around, sometimes does not take that into account. And I would really, really like to see an industry and an overall, yeah, an industry that is more understanding of their talents and understanding in a way that, okay, you're delivering, if you're good, whatever, but you're also expected to deliver in other fronts. So an industry that's more understanding of you as a human being, not just a machine that's producing content and that's making money for your company. Being understood a lot better as human beings, that we have our spaces, that we're not a unisphere. On the contrary, we are a multiple spheres that connect, and an industry that understands you as a human being. That's what I would really like for the industry to do and to happen. Because if you were understood a little better as a human being, and you were given like a better approach into like your work-life balance, how you relate the work, whatever, you would have happier people. And when you have happy people, you have people who deliver better. And isn't that what we all want?
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Alejandro, thank you so much. I can't thank you enough for opening up with us and for sharing your story with me. And I wish you the best of luck with the next newscast, and obviously with the rest of your career as well. But I know you don't need it because you're great.
Well, thank you. Thank you, media healers. This has been therapy. Thank you for listening, y'all.
Of course. I love this. Thank you again for sharing your story.
Journalists, this one's for you, to help you heal, to help you understand your worth, and to help you know you're not alone. So share the love and subscribe to Spotify and YouTube, and follow us on Instagram. The Awakened Journalist is proud to present Media Healers by Emiliana Molina Fajardo.